Production planning. At the end of this topic, you must be able to define production planning, outline aspects that must be considered during production planning, explain advantages of production planning, explain the meaning of production control, outline aspects that must be considered during production control, justify reasons why businesses must manage safety in the workplace, explain or discuss requirements for a safe environment, explain, discuss, recommend precautionary measure that businesses should take when handling machinery, explain the purpose of Occupational Health and Safety Act, recommend or suggest ways in which businesses can comply with the Occupational Health and Safety Act. Please also bear in mind that when studying this topic, you need to also make use of your examination guidelines to take note of topics that we won't be focusing on as guided by the examination guideline. Now, what do we mean by production planning? Production planning refers to setting goals for the production department and establishing policies or programs and procedures to achieve these goals. It aims at decreasing cost and time and increasing output by organizing the resources and workplace to maximize efficiency. Remember, when you decide to start a business, the first or the main goal is to make a profit, right? Now, in order for us to make more money, we need to cut down on how much we are actually spending. But again, to be a good businessman or woman, you shouldn't compromise on quality. But if there's ways of you cutting down on costs, then it's a good thing. Then we are not spending too much. And therefore, if we are not spending too much, we'll be making more money when we are selling these products that we are manufacturing. And if we can spend less time making a product, then it means within a short space of time, we are able to produce a lot of products, which comes at an advantage. It becomes an advantage for us as a business because we will be making more products, short space of time, spending less money also, and therefore we have a lot of outputs to sell, and we are able to mark these up at a certain price, and therefore we are reaching the goal of making a profit. Now, the next bullet, production planning involves everything from the individual roles of staff, the ordering of stock, to the final delivery to the customer. Planning is done due to constant changes in the manufacturing processes. Production planning must control the following aspects: the actual production where we are producing these items, inventory. When we are talking about our inventory, we need to know that how much do we have and how much we still need to order. If we don't have this kind of stock taking or control in place, then it means we will most likely have people stealing our stock or even have some damaged inventory. We need to also focus on having control over the factory layout as well as our production costs. Now we're going to look at the aspects to consider during production planning. The first one is the planning. Now, the first thing you need to do is with production planning of each aspect of the overall process. It includes the layout of a factory and the flow of materials through the process. The planning has to cover all aspects of the production process, such as the factory layout based on the optimal flow of material. It includes decisions on the purchasing of materials, machinery, and equipment and staffing. Budget, machines, and manpower are calculated and used to determine expected output. Now, as we all know, before carrying out any task or project, you need to plan for it. Now, this stage is simply that we are planning before we start the production process. We need to know what kind of material that we need to buy, How much is this material going to cost us? What kind of machinery do we need in order for us to produce these items that we want to produce? How many people are needed to operate these machineries? And after having an idea or a picture of the items, the material, the machinery, we still have to consider the costs. How much are we going to be paying these people? How much is the machinery that we need going to cost us? The costs of operating the whole factory. These are all the things that we are now going to look at when budgeting for this production, whatever it is that we want to be producing. Next section is routing. Involves planning and the sequence in which the production operations will take place. It establishes the best and cheaper way to sequence the production process, setting up the actual route which the material must follow in the process to save time and costs. Routine determines the following aspects: the quality and type of raw material, manufacturing process and sequence, specification of the final product, cost analysis. Now remember, in the beginning we mentioned that because we want to make a profit, that is the main goal of businesses, right? We want to minimize the amount that we are spending. We need to reduce our costs, reduce the time spent to produce these items in order to now increase our output. Now with routing, this is what we are trying to achieve during this step. We are trying to plan our production in such a way that we are able to get the best way to produce without spending too much money. And therefore, if we are able to achieve that, then in essence, we'll be able to make a profit, right? Now, during this stage, we need to also look at our raw material. The raw material, the quality, the type of raw material that we need for this item. Again, as much as we want to cut down on cost, we don't compromise too much on our quality because we want to retain our customers. We are not trying to chase them away. We don't want to make one-off profit. We want recurring profit. And in order for us to do that is by having a customer base that we are able to also retain. And to retain this customer base, we need to be providing or selling quality products to these people. So if we are able to find a way of reducing our costs but still maintaining good quality, then we are running a very good business. The manufacturing process. We need to look at how we are manufacturing these items. Is there a way to speed up the process without also compromising the finished product? If there's a way of getting a machinery instead of a person making this item, and it allows us to make more products at a short space of time, by all means, we will consider using this machine instead of utilizing just people making these items, right? So these are all the things that we are focusing on when we are routing. Next up is loading. Loading involves planning who will be responsible for each activity identified during the routing process. Involves allocating every person, machine to their task. Loading calculates the amount of time each machine will need to operate during a day. It also indicates which machines are not being used to their full capacity. It is linked to the output required to fulfill orders and prevent the overloading of employees and machines. Now, we have looked at the planning, right? We've looked at the type of material that we need, people that we need to involve, machineries that need to be bought. We also went through routing, where we looked at the best sequence to cut down on costs and be able to produce this item at a less amount of time. We've gone through all of this, but we don't just stop there. We now need to move on to the executing part of things. Now we move on to loading, where we now decide who's going to be doing what, who's responsible for what task, who is going to be using which machinery. We look at the amount of time each of these machineries will need to operate during the day, right? And knowing this kind of information, we are able to see which machines are not being used to their fullest capacity, or which machines are actually being overworked. Because if we are overworking these machines beyond their capacity, then we are basically going to damage these machineries, which is something that we don't want. Because with damaged machineries, it means we need to fix them. Fixing means more costs, and we are trying to do what? Cut down on costs, not increase costs, right? And you see, by knowing this information, we are going back to the main goal of saying we want to reduce our costs. So by knowing the information about the amount of time each machinery needs, we're able to check how best we can have a high increase of output at a limited amount of time. And we will also check the quality produced by these machineries, because it does not help producing something very quickly, but it is not of good standard. It's not in good shape to sell to people. So by going through this process of loading, we are able to check all of that. And if we are satisfied by the products that are being manufactured, then it means we are closer to that goal of saying we're producing at less time, less cost, and we are having a higher output, meaning we'll be making more money. Scheduling involves the timing of the production process. It prioritizes certain jobs and determines which jobs need to be completed before the next one can take place. Scheduling takes into consideration the routing and loading of both labor and machinery, involves calculating the time required to perform each activity in the manufacturing process, planning when each activity should start, and then calculating the time required to complete the whole process. Time periods that need to be worked out considering the preparation of raw material, delivery of raw materials, delivery of final products. Scheduling is affected by capacity and size of the business or availability of staff, machinery, and material. The more detailed the schedule, the better a resource it will be for controlling the process. Like we mentioned, time and costs. We want to reduce these two factors, right? Now with scheduling, it means that we are planning in such a way that we are looking at the production and saying, this is how long it will take us to produce this. This is how long it will take us to perform this activity. This is how long the machine can produce one item or two items or 50 items in a day, right? So by having this information, then we are able to identify parts that are hindering us from reducing the time spent. Maybe we have one machine and one machine can only produce 50 items, whereas we want to produce at least 100 in a day. So in order for this to happen, then it means we need to double up on machinery. So we are looking at the capacity. Do we have enough manpower? Do we have enough machinery? With more manpower, more machinery, then it means we are able to produce more items in a short space of time. So scheduling, we are now breaking it down into detail, the amount of time that we are spending on these activities or on this production, and how best can we reduce the amount of time spent on the production process. Now, the advantages of production planning. Planning allows an entrepreneur to ensure that every machine and worker is used to their full capacity and not left with nothing to do. The company can ensure that it has the correct amount of supplies and stock at the given time. This reduces wastage and unnecessary storage costs. Planning will prevent time being wasted and increase the number of final products. Planning process involves quality checks and ensures the correct quality is reached in the shortened possible time. So, the advantages of planning. We said our main goals is to cut down on cost and the amount of time spent in the production process, as well as increase our output. Now, by planning, we are able to work out how we will be able to achieve those three things. By planning, we are able to prevent any wastages of material. If we're wasting material, then it means we are spending too much money on material. If we plan accordingly, then we will order only what we need and not overspend on material. And if we don't overspend, we are cutting down on costs. If people are not sitting idle, meaning everyone must be working in a workplace, it means if all the workers are putting in their 100% effort, then we are able to produce more items within a day, meaning we are also minimizing the amount of time spent to produce items. But if we have workers who are just sitting there idle, not doing anything, it means only a few will make a few items that day, then the following day only a few employees are producing certain items, then it takes us longer to reach our target, and therefore it means we are spending too much time just to produce these items. But again, with planning, if we are planning properly, it means we'll be able to buy quality material, we'll be checking the machinery that is producing these items or the people making these items, that they are making quality items but still not wasting too much time on just one item. That is the advantage of planning our production. We don't just go into the factory and say, okay, let's do this. We need to plan it thoroughly, take into consideration anything that is possible that might hinder us from achieving the three main goals. We have reached the end of this